This is Ryan's beautiful 2001 Ford Mustang GT. The car is black, has 5-speed black leather interior, beautiful car, low mileage, and this is what it used to look like. This is basically what a normal GT would look like, but a lot of this car would change in the near future. And this is the story about the car. So Ryan's dad actually had a 2001 Ford Mustang V6 automatic car that he had picked up in 2002, and ever since then Ryan had wanted a 99 to 04 Mustang. His dad had added some wheels and done some things to the car, and I think that's really cool because that probably showed Ryan the possibilities of things you can do with cars and things that you really like about your car that you can change. But historically for Ryan, before any of this Mustang stuff happened, he had an '03 BMW M3 and an '09 BMW M3. He was a BMW guy, and I really like these cars as well. Now, these aren't Ryan's specific cars, these are just to give you an idea of what this body style of BMW looked like. But these BMWs were actually very nice cars. A 6-cylinder making basically the same power as a Mach 1. They ran the same 0 to 60 in quarter-mile speeds as a Mach 1, and they're very well engineered. So my brother and I really liked these M3s, and we even considered these before we got into Mustangs. I think they're great cars. And so that's just a really small piece of the history of Ryan before we get into the Mustang stuff. But I think that's really cool that he had these. So Ryan sold the BMW and he got a 2016 Explorer to daily drive, and he enjoyed that for a long time, but he had the itch to get a fun car again, so he started to look at 99 to 04 Mustang GTs. And so after talking to a high school buddy about cars, his friend told him that his regional manager had in his garage a really nice low mileage Mustang GT that the guy had bought as a dream car, but life got in the way, so the car ended up sitting for a very long time. So he said, I asked for the guy's phone number and the rest is history. This beautiful GT only had 19,000 miles on it, but it was covered in dust. Even under all that dust, though, you can tell it's a very nice car. At first glance, I can tell it had aftermarket bullet wheels, which were a little deeper dish and a little bit wider. But the car was absolutely beautiful. Yeah, it was a little bit dirty, but it was something very, very hard to find. Only 19,000 miles. The interior looked absolutely beautiful on the car, and of course underneath the hood it looks all original and very nice. Ryan's friend actually went and picked up the car for him and trailered it down to his house. And one of the first things he did was take off the front license plate frame and fill the holes and give that GT a nice clean look again. And something else you'll notice in this picture of the front end of the car is he added a Mach 1 grille delete. So you can remember what the grille looked like. This is what it was: honeycomb grille with a corral around the running pony, which, little side note on the Bullet, even though it was the same grille and had the same corral, they actually blacked out the corral around the running pony on the Bullet. And the Mach 1 actually got a full grille delete. It doesn't just take away the honeycomb, it actually has a whole bunch of pieces that go with it, and the whole pony has to be changed because of the bracket and the way it's all held together. And this is a very common upgrade for people with GTs and V6 cars because it looks so good. And the Mach 1 also came with a chin spoiler, and that's another thing that a lot of people add to their GT and V6 Mustangs to make the front end look really good. And so Ryan added both those things to his GT, and you can see the whole front end of the car look better. It gives the car a lower and more aggressive look. And so here's a nice shot of the odometer with only 19,400 miles on it. The interior, like we talked about, was absolutely beautiful. And so the next order of business was to get the car cleaned up even more. Now, every car, even this one with low miles, would have light swirl marks on it, so he went and had the paint corrected. And so basically what that is it's taking off a little bit of the clear coat that has little fine scratches in it and making the car look absolutely perfect again. And so if you notice in these pictures, you'll see a bunch of green tape around certain edges of the car, and that's where they mask off certain places and they'll use a buffer, and that's what they use to buff out or kind of sand down almost with certain abrasive pastes, kind of like a wax, and they're called buffing compounds. And so what it really is it's cleaning up the clear coat. It doesn't touch the paint of the car. The paint is underneath the clear coat. The clear coat is like a clear gel. If you were to look at it with a microscope, you would see that it's this clear gel that sits over the paint. And when that gel or paint, that's what it is a clear paint, when it has little fine scratches in it and things, that's where you see all the swirls. And so taking the buffing compound and getting that buffed out right smooths out, it kind of grinds down that layer of clear paint until those scratches are gone, and you try not to burn through the clear coat and actually get the actual paint of the car, because that would be really bad. You would go right through the paint. And I can see how absolutely necessary it would be on a black car like this to make it look so good, and look how beautiful it looks now. And so you can see that it didn't take much to make this car look beautiful. And so the next thing he did was tint the windows, and they look really good. This car looks beautiful. I love a black GT with bullet wheels. I think it's a wonderful looking car just like this. I really like everything about the way the GT looks, but this car was going to be up for some major changes. So let's just look at some of these pictures of how good it looked as a GT, a stock GT, and with the minor upgrades, the paint correction, just really nice looking car, something to be proud of, to drive anywhere, to enjoy. I think it was an awesome looking car like this. But Ryan was getting ready to make some different changes to the car. He added a Flowmaster American Thunder catback and an MGW short throw shifter. And you can see how good it looks in there in the car. And he also added the Bullet Mach 1 style shift ring, which is around the shifter boot there, and that looks really good. And he also added some Bullet Mach 1 Cobra style interior upgraded package, larger headrests, and a Bullet Mach 1 shift knob. And he also added a touchscreen head unit that had a backup camera on it. So you can see on the back of the car he added a little camera, and so now he has a backup camera and a nice touch screen there. And if you look down in the bottom right of this picture, something else he added that's really cool is a USB auxiliary port where the cigarette lighter would be. And while we're down here looking in this area of the car, something that caught my attention is the traction control button. If you see, it actually has a spinning wheel. That is actually different than the track lock button that is on all of the 01 to 04 Mustangs. Only the early 01 Mustang GTs had that button. So that would actually make me assume that this car has the Windsor engine in it. It has the T45 instead of the 3650. I'm not absolutely positive about that, but that's what my brother's 01 GT it has. It's just like that. And my brother's is an early 01. So here's a little comparison. I took a picture and made a collage. The bottom row is what most 01 to 04 Mustangs have. You can see the buttons are slightly different. They have little dots for the lights versus the slit lights that the ones above have. And of course the main difference, what we're talking about here, the track off button on the bottom versus the spinning tire on top. So you can see those are the differences. So like all the Terminators, all the Mach 1s, they have the bottom row there. The GTs, the 01 to 04 GTs have that, but his has the top row there, and that's an early 01 thing. And so then next he decided to do a spoiler delete, make it look more like a Bullet this way, and it looks really nice and clean without the spoiler on the back. And so the car was looking really good, and he decided he wanted to change up the emblems a little more, so he took the GT badges off and put the running pony on the side. And I can understand that because I always liked the running pony badges on the side of the Mustang. Right when I got my first V6 Mustang, I was very happy that it had the running pony on the side. And that's something that all the V6 Mustangs came with from 94 to 04. And that was something that I thought the V8s should have on the side, but they had GT badges and things. Except, of course, in the case of the Mach 1, I was very thrilled when I found out that the Mach 1s would have the running pony on the side because I really like that look. And so some people do change to the running pony. I've seen a lot of people do that with the Bullet Mustangs. They'll even take off the GT badge and put the running pony on the side. And I like that running pony. I think it looks really good. And next he changed the grille so that it didn't have just the running pony in it. It actually had the tri-bar behind it as well. And then he changed the wheels from the Bullets to a CCW style wheel, an 18-inch. So here's a comparison of before and after the 17-inch Bullet wheels versus the 18-inch CCW style wheels. And he also took off the front bumper and added an 03 Cobra front bumper. And so you can see the front end of the car was starting to look a lot different with the different emblem in the bumper. And here's a little comparison of before and after with the wheels especially. The wheels make the car, they say. They really change the look of the car. And so here's a few shots of what the car looks like now with the running pony and the CCW wheels and the Terminator front bumper. And so then he added a Terminator hood, and I think that's a good look to the car too. I love the GT hood, but for what he's going to be doing with the car, you'll see that was a good option for him. And so with the car looking tough and everything, he added a Kenne Supercharger. This is the 2.1 liter. My friend had the same one on his car. I had a lot of fun with it. Very nice, powerful thing to add to the GT. And this made 408 horsepower to the rear wheels, which is actually quite a bit. And GTs usually handle about 450 before they start snapping connecting rods. And so it was within the good range of how much power that the car could handle with the stock bottom end. And I think this is an excellent choice. This is what you would call a positive displacement supercharger. So the supercharger sits on top of the engine and it forces the air down into the heads instead of like a centrifugal style supercharger, which would be almost like a turbo style system that spools the air and then puts it up through the air intake of the car. And so he actually told me that my Bullet Mustang was an inspiration to him doing a positive displacement supercharger on this car because I had done a ported Eaton on my Bullet with a Torque Tech kit, and I think that that's really cool that he saw my videos and he liked my car, that helped him decide to do this with his. What I really like about these positive displacement superchargers is the torque curve is instant. It has instant torque as soon as you snap the throttle, where a centrifugal supercharger, it has to build, kind of like a turbo would build boost. There's a little lag there and then it peaks. And so these are really great superchargers. They're really fun because they're just instant torque. As soon as you get on it, it's ready to go and it's power right there. And of course, one of the best things about it is the sound. These things scream. They're very iconic. The Terminator Cobras definitely put that out there as something that everybody got burned into their mind as something they wanted. And so this is something really cool. And so he added a 75mm throttle body and JLT intake, and he went back to the dyno and he made 439 horsepower, 452 pound-feet of torque. And that's on 11 pounds of boost, which is the same amount that my Bullet was making. And so here's a nice little run on the dyno. You can hear how cool that Kenne Bell sounds screaming. And so let's talk about my Bullet for a second in comparison to this. Like I said, he had said that my Bullet was an inspiration to him with putting a positive displacement supercharger on there. And my Bullet was built very differently. It had a forged bottom end from a 04 Cobra, brand new block, everything, heads, cams. It had a lot done to it. And the Bullet was conservatively tuned on the first tune, and it put down the exact same 439 horsepower. and later that same setup would be retuned to make 520. But while I had it at the 439 horsepower, which is what his GT was putting out, it was actually pretty cool because I was really fast with a car that weighs that much, you know, compared to a new car like a Hellcat or a new 5.0. The new Edge Mustangs are so much lighter. And so with that much horsepower, you can beat a lot of cars. I've won over 100 races in my Bullet, and I had raced up against some pretty fast cars like Scat Pack Challengers, Hellcats, ZL1 Supercharged Camaro. Those were some of my favorite wins in my Bullet. And so I thought it would be cool just to show some pictures of my Bullet during all this, because these two cars are related in that realm, and I wanted to show some dyno footage of my car on the dyno so you can see how it sounds with the supercharger with ported Eaton and everything. And so now you can see he had a very nice Mustang GT, something that was special that he had put together himself, that he had changed the wheels, he had changed the bumper, the spoiler, he had added that supercharger to it. He had done a lot of things to personalize it and make it his, and I think that's a really good looking car. So next he decided that he wanted to keep going with the cosmetic upgrades, and the next thing he did was add just a tiny little lip spoiler on the back of the car. It's actually really subtle and really hard to see, but it's a little tiny lip spoiler there. And then he decided he would go ahead and buy a MMD from American Muscle 03 Cobra style spoiler and have that put on the car. Now he actually painted it himself with spray cans, and it looks absolutely wonderful. I think he did a great job painting this, and the car looks awesome, and that's something really fun to do. And so here are just a few pictures of the car, how it looked in that setup. The car would change so many times since he's owned it, and it's really hard to decide which look you like the best, because all the looks that it's had so far have been really cool, and so it's a shame you can't just change it back and forth and keep different looks. But he decided he liked that 03 Cobra hood, but he wanted to do something a little bit different. So he got a 2001 Cobra Mustang hood and added some track spec motorsports hood vents, and so it has a really aggressive look. Now the 01 Cobra hood is really interesting because it was later used on all the 03-04 V6 Mustangs that did not come with the pony package hood scoop. But anyway, it was known more as a 03 V6 hood in the later years, although it does have a power dome in the middle of it, so it bumps upward versus the New Edge Mustang V6 and GT hood that, if you actually look at it, it cuts down towards the engine. And so that actually causes clearance issues for positive displacement superchargers. Now the 2.1 liter Kenne Bell system sits low enough that you could use the stock hood with it, but in my case for the Bullet, I needed to cut a hole in the hood to make room for that supercharger, and so this hood, the 01 Cobra hood or the V6 0304 hood, was actually a good option for the Torque Tech kit. In my case, I did buy one, I never put it on the car, but it is a good hood, and they actually used them on the test Terminators until they came up with the Terminator hood that has a functional heat extractors. But anyway, so here's some really cool pictures of his car. You can see with the hood open that those vents are exposed a little better. You can see how they look. And the next thing he did cosmetically was add some Bullet sail panels, Bullet Mach 1 C-pillars. So this is a really good picture because it actually shows what the piece is. A lot of people don't know about this, and there are a lot of questions about them. So you can see in this picture that the C-pillar cuts back towards the front of the car on the bottom part where his hand is there on the bottom. And the standard GT and V6 and Cobra sail panels, this is what they call them, they actually don't curve back like that. And so in this previous picture of his car, you can see how the back window glass and the C-pillar are a totally different shape. And when Ford decided they wanted to make the Bullet a little bit special, they decided to change that C-pillar and bring it down so it actually lined up with the scoops that are on the side of the car there. And so it kind of cleaned up the body lines. Now, he didn't change the glass, which with tinted windows doesn't really matter, but if the windows weren't tinted, you would notice that the glass is a different shape still. So now you can see how better the car looks, and it's something that you wouldn't notice, but once you know about it, you really start to desire to have it. And speaking of subtle changes, something you might not notice is he added 2003-2004 Cobra Terminator side skirts, and they are actually flat on the sides instead of dipping in towards the body of the car. So if you can see, looking back at an old picture, how the side skirts dip in and curve inward on the GT V6 Mach 1, but then on the Cobra it has the flat side skirt. And so again, that's something that once you know about it, you definitely have an eye for it and you see it later, and it is a nice little change. And so then he decided to change the badges on the fenders again, and this time he went with 1966 Mustang GT badges. It's very interesting and it looks pretty good. And he also added a black tattered American flag on the roof. And so next he decided that he wanted to add some gauges to the car. With a forced induction car especially, you should be keeping an eye on what the air-fuel ratio is. And so he has a dual gauge instrument cluster bezel that houses his AEM wideband gauge and his AEM boost gauge. So definitely you can see how this car has evolved from a low mileage stock GT to a supercharged, cosmetically upgraded Mustang GT. And it still is low mileage with only 24,000 miles on it, and it's a beautiful car. And the two-valve Mustangs are great, especially when you add boost to them. They are very fast cars and they are very reliable. I've actually owned 7 GT Mustangs, 2 of those being Bullet Mustangs, but the two-valve is a great car, and I really think that they are something that you can buy right now for a very good price, even with low miles, and modify it like this and have something very special, very fast, very good looking, and even have room to upgrade it like this with how affordable they are these days. And so basically this car has filled in the gap of what you would buy if you couldn't quite afford a Terminator Cobra. And he had talked about how his dad and him had always loved Terminators and wanted one, but just never were able to afford one back when they were new and everything. And so although this car had filled the gap for the need for a Terminator and it made very close performance to what one would make, he still always wanted one, and he decided that he'd start looking for a Terminator Cobra to add to his collection so he could keep the GT and have a Terminator. And something really funny that he did on his Instagram was he posted these pictures and said, "I've decided to put a Lego character on each of my key rings to show what cars they go to." So he had the Stormtrooper for the Ford Explorer, Darth Vader for his Mustang GT, and then he posted this character and said, "Can anybody guess what car I just got?" So as you can see, it is the Terminator. And he ended up getting an Oxford White 2003 Mustang Cobra. And I think that is an excellent choice. I think it's really cool that he has these two. And I know exactly what it's like to still want a Terminator Cobra even after having Supercharged GT. And I had the same setup for a long time, and now I have 2 Terminators and a Mach 1. And it's really cool to go in the garage and have a variety. But there's no doubt that this car is very special to him, and it's still a very nice low mileage Mustang GT. And I really like the GTs. I keep saying that, but these cars are a little underappreciated because they're two-valve Mustangs. But here's an example of one that he's turned into something very special, and it's something that a lot of people like. A lot of people are on his Instagram and they love following him and seeing what he's done with the car. And it's really interesting, all the little changes he's made over the years. So it's cool that he has the GT and he has the Terminator. And I'm just going to leave the end of this video with some pulls from inside the car. You can really hear that Kenne bell whine. I think it sounds really cool. And so thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed the story. I really enjoy making these friendships. I have a lot of people who contact me and ask me to make these videos, and people like him who follow me on Instagram, and I follow him, and it's just really cool to have these friendships. I did want to stress that at the end of all this, he thanked me for everything I do with the cars, said that he's always looking up to me and my brother and the things that we do in the videos we put out, and I want to thank him for supporting me and the channel and my Instagram and just my car hobby. So glad we have this friendship, and here's some pulls in his car.